Thank you, Whitney. As Whitney said, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Lockstep. In my role, one of the things I do is host roundtables with customers and listen what they're saying about the current environment. We've talked a lot this year about digital transformation with customers, specifically with that things like email automation or customer self-service come into play about that. And as we've talked with people about this journey in digital transformation, a lot of issues have come up that are really, you think are simple to solve, but turn out to be more complicated than you thought. And one of them is just around contact data, your ability to contact your customers in a reliable way. So I want to jump into that topic today. A little bit of context: Anytime Collect is an AR automation solution. It basically helps you collect cash faster, makes your bank balance bigger. The way we help is, first of all, it's a cloud-based solution, so it supports remote work, especially in the time of a pandemic. We have automated customer and contact data management. This is a new capability we developed, and we'll delve into that a little as we go through today. We also automate customer communications with emails to be able to go out and remind customers of coming due payments. Customer self-service to allow companies to go online and pay their invoices directly there, or download that so they don't have to email you. Collections activity management, which is really the ability for a team to work collectively rather than individual inboxes. They can work as a team and divvy up the work and manage assignments that way. And then forecasting and reporting to have visibility and line of sight for all your stakeholders into exactly what cash is coming in and when it will be coming in. So that's a little bit about what we do. We serve a lot of great brands. We have over 180 customers using the product today. And we're the leaders in ERP integration. So we have direct connections into all the major ERPs. If yours is not on here, let us know. We can always add that fairly quickly. So let's jump into our topic. Cash flow is a priority. In a recent survey done by Deloitte, over 50% of CFOs said that liquidity and cash flow management was at the top of the list. And that makes sense. In the pandemic, access to capital has been harder, and really securing liquidity is important. So cash, improper cash flow is the #1 reason businesses fail. And so being on top of that is critical. The challenge has been that the pandemic has also exposed cash traps in accounts receivable. And so a cash trap is simply a delay, if you will, in the receipt of your cash. And what's causing those delays are the cash traps themselves. If you look at the state of accounts receivable today, this is from a study that was done last year, 37% of the invoices are received as paper. So they're sent out as paper and received as paper. 39% are done with email. And then you can see the various forms of others, fax, EDI, or a web portal. And it's really, some of these cash traps are obvious. I mean, the 37% that's paper is a big deal. One analyst I talked to recently said it's probably closer to 50%. And so while some of these are obvious, others are not. In email, there's this issue of using your personal inbox for collections rather than using automation. And we'll talk about what you can do to eliminate based on digital transformation techniques and why digital transformation is becoming so important. But this is one of our first poll questions we want to do. We're always interested to find out if the studies that we see are accurate based on talking to people in the industry. So if you have a chance, we'd love to find out just a guess of what you think the percentage of your invoices are that are sent as paper. I'll give you a second to fill that out. So it's interesting. We have a split. So there's a good portion that's a 40% or more. And then there's some that are sort of in that 10 to 20 range and 10% range. So thank you for your participation in that. So this is the digital transformation journey that we work with a lot of customers on. One is just replacing paper with email communication and doing that correctly. That's a large part of what we'll talk about today. So we're going to concentrate on that first step. But the second step is to replace personal inboxes, using Outlook and Excel with, some automation and a shared workspace so that people can share activities back and forth. And then really powering, online access for your customers to get at, the information they need rather than sending them PDFs. So let's talk about the power of email. Email is powerful because it's fast. With the right service provider, delivery of email is under 2 seconds. Compare that with paper mail, right? Email is also inexpensive. There's not an incremental cost for sending another email. It's reliable. If you've done a good job not to be blacklisted as a sender, your email is delivered 100% of the time. It's also ubiquitous. Every AP department on the planet has an email address of one sort or another. And it can be automated. Because it's electronic, all kinds of automations can be done to generate the email as well as manage it and respond to it. We'll delve into that. But here's the rub. Do you have all your customers' AP department emails? If you've been in business for 20 to 30 years, many of those processes were based on physical paper. Momentum has kept it that way, right? When we engage companies in creating online account access for them, there's anywhere from 30 to 90% of the accounts without an email address as part of the contact data. So not only can the email be missing, but that contact email could be invalid, meaning your communications don't get delivered. It might be wrong because it's the wrong actual address. The address works, but it's going to the wrong person or the wrong department. And it might be a personal address as opposed to the AP address, a role-based address. So all of these issues create incorrect contact data, which slows down the cash flow. Let's dig into each of these a little bit more. Missing email addresses. So paper-based invoicing is the #1 reason emails are missing. There was little or no need to have the emails. But with the pandemic, that's become a real issue. The Postal Service is running behind, which adds additional delays to an already slow process. Your customers may be working remotely, so if your invoices are going into the office, they're not going to see them, and that's going to delay things. And chances are, if you're paying or if you're issuing a paper invoice, they're going to pay you with a paper check, which is going to slow things down even more. So all of that, what we're documenting as we talk to people is anywhere from a 10 to 20 day delay based on using paper rather than an email address. And as we mentioned, we've seen anywhere from 30 to 90% of those missing. That's when we first engage customers. And this is one of the bigger problems that we help customers address, is just go solve this one. We'll talk a little bit about how we do that. There's also some email addresses are just invalid because they may have been captured or entered incorrectly. The address itself may have been turned off by the customer because of the change in their process. There could have been a domain name change that requires rerouting the invoice. Now, if you catch a bounce due to an invalid email, you can try and contact the customer and get a new one and fix it. That might only delay you a day. On the other hand, if you don't catch the bounce, which a lot of times people don't, you won't know about it until the invoice goes past due, which is closer to 30 days. And we consistently see when we validate email addresses as part of contact validation, anywhere from 2 to 6%, but really hovering a lot around 5%. So if you've got hundreds or thousands of accounts, that's a significant impact on your cash flow that needs to be dealt with. What's a wrong email address, right? This is the issue where you may have a valid email address, but you recorded it, the buyer's email address, or maybe the procurement team. And these are the people, they're not the AP department. They don't pay you. They signed off to buy maybe the product or the service, but they're not the ones that actually do the payment. And so when these individuals receive the invoices, they don't think that it's their responsibility to deal with it because they think that maybe you sent it to the AP department as well. And so they go untouched until the invoice goes past due, and then you start your reach out. And this creates a whole cycle of chasing down the right person and reinitiating the process, essentially throwing a 30-day delay in this. And what we've seen when we survey customers is that this is a very frequent problem, that, get validating that you've got the correct email address going to the correct person is important. Then there's the different types of email addresses. So a role-based email address is something that would go to a department, something like AP or accounts payable or payables, at yourcustomer.com. A personal one is just what, as it sounds, it's going to an individual person, maybe Bailey or Charlie or something like that. And the problem with that is that, and we'll talk about the challenge of personal inboxes, the power of a role-based is that AP departments have defined service level agreements, right? They need to support their controller and CFO and do it in a way that they match their days payable outstanding. And so they're very conscientious about that. And if you know you're sending to an AP inbox, you can be guaranteed there's a better SLA. And that's one of the things, is to really make sure that that's being done. The issue with personal inboxes is they're black holes, right? Or another way to think about it is bottlenecks. Your contact at the customer may be out of the office for any number of reasons. They may be on vacation. They maybe even left the company. In any of these cases, your email is getting stuck in the personal inboxes. It's not available to other people in your customer. And it could, really clog up how it gets paid. In evaluating contact data, so part of our assessment when we meet with customers is to really break down what does their contact data look like. We find that most organizations have 50% or more of their email addresses as personal rather than role-based. And while some small businesses never set up an AP alias, more and more do. And there's a good reason to really think about, do you have all the role-based email addresses that you could possibly have? So that's the challenge with email, contact data itself, specifically around email addresses. The second issue around that is that manual email is a cash trap. So if you're using Outlook or Gmail really as your method of managing collections, it's not integrated with your accounting system. So things like aging can't come in and let you know what's the next best activity to go do. There's no automation, so it can't trigger off a notice to a customer. You don't have visibility into what everybody's doing, and it certainly doesn't have the controls to figure out what activities. So that's the other area that we're seeing with organizations, as they're saying, okay, every other department has email automation except accounting, and start to address that issue. We'll do our second poll question. We've got two of them in our thing today. We're hoping to find out what you use to process your own emails. Interesting. Yeah, so this is a common trend. So 100% of the respondents today, so the second time we've seen this, said that they were using Outlook and Gmail. In surveys that we've done historically, it's been 90% or more that have done that. So thank you again for participating in the poll. Here's the impact of email automation. We do benchmarks. So you can imagine we have those 180 plus customers. And one of the things that we do is we take a snapshot of the receivables and kind of everything that's taking place inside their organization when we start the project with them. And then 6 months later, we take another snapshot and we compare what happened, right? What happened to DSO, what happened to past due, average days delinquent, things along those lines. And this is, for instance, one impact of email automation. So once we added email automation to customers, on average, we saw a 53 or basically a 54% drop in average days delinquent from 39 days down to 18. And that just shows you the impact, because what happens is every single customer is now being touched at the right time. And they understand that you're on top and watching everything. And so they respond better. And it's helpful that you're just getting at the top of their queues and getting the information out that they can take action on at the right time. So email automation has a major impact on day sales outstanding. So here are the 3 steps that we use to correct data, to correct the data around those contacts and lower DSO. One is to harvest email addresses. How do you fill in the missing email addresses that are out there? Then we verify deliverability, being able to look at all of those and say, do they really work? And then verify correctness. So maybe a valid email address, but is it a correct one for the invoicing process? Here's how harvesting works. And this was developed in conjunction with our customers. I talked about, that roundtable discussion that we do. This is one of them. And this was a situation where the organization was sending out over 4,500 statements every month. Those 4,500 statements were all manual, so they were paper-based. And the group would hold what was called a folding party. They would meet once a month, 18 people in a room folding for a day, stamping, getting it out, and whatnot. And clearly, they wanted to change the process. So what happened is we built out a series of direct mail campaigns and statement inserts. So now at the folding party, there was also an insert on the statement to tell people to go online. And then even on the statement, it was promoting the ability to go online. And it was basically an announcement that everything was going to go digital, that they could go register for their digital account online. And that registration online looks something like this, where it says, hey, great, put in your account number, then put in your AP department email address and register, right? And that's now in the system. To put it in perspective, just that the impact that they were able to do is that 4,500 is now down to 300 per month, which is a pretty major impact. And they're just on paper savings alone, the cost of that, they're saving $70,000 a year on that. So pretty major impact, just getting email addresses in to be able to do email automation. The next thing to do is verify deliverability. So as you collect something, is it actually deliverable? And that's where we use a service. There's multiple services out there, but we use a service called Bright Verify that actually goes in and loads all the emails, and then we'll double check that they are valid and deliverable. It doesn't mean they're necessarily correct, but they are valid. And it's great because then we can go back and for the ones that are invalid, do the same thing we had done with the missing ones to get new ones. And it really helps to then, think about how do we get, that conversion over into being 100% digital. And again, our experience, because we're using this tool with customers, is it's, very commonly about 5%. The final thing is then to verify correctness. This is a capability of our system that I'm showing. So here's a situation where, I've got, an email address. It's, you can see it's a personal email address, mshanahan@sprockets.com. I've got some information here. What our system can do is either automatically or on demand request a profile update of customers. And what a profile update does is it sends an email to M. Shanahan and asks that person whoever's at the end of that to verify all the information, contact information. So what is the AP department email address? What's the EIN? What's the phone number? All the bill to address. So all of that information can be updated, including any additional contacts, any supporting documentation like a tax exemption certificate that might be needed. So all of the relevant profile information is actually then updated directly by the customer and comes back into the system so that you know that it's been verified as being correct. And so those steps that we talked about here of harvesting, verifying, delivery, invalidation, and then verifying correctness really has a pretty dramatic impact on DSO, as we talked about just on that measure of average days delinquent. Now, what that allows, once you know you have valid data that's correct, you're now able to reach a new level of automation. So this is what we mean by email automation. Our system, for instance, directly connects up to the your ERP or accounting system. And we bring over the relevant data, the contact data, the invoice data, et cetera. And then a rules engine actually triggers off when should, for instance, a profile request go out, or when should we send a notice to a customer about a coming due invoice. All those credit and collections policies are automated as rules that then send out personalized communication to the customer that brings them to that online self-service experience where they can fill out their profile or even make a payment. And then if necessary, the engine can also create an activity and assign it to a collector to engage with the customer. But you can see that, for the most part, that automated communication, that customer self-service creates a fully automated way to be able to collect your cash and bring it in. But it's predicated that you have the right contact information. So to turn on that kind of automation and rely on it means your data has to be correct. The benefits are pretty great. These are the things that we sit down with customers and really think through, how does it increase cash flow, right? By lowering DSO, cash from operations by having a bigger bank balance and not having to maybe rely on outside credit terms. Certainly freeing up staff time to focus on higher priority items. These are the things that you can quantify. And believe it or not, it starts with good, correct contact data. So as we talked about, starting the digital transformation journey is really thinking about making sure you're off paper and that you really have the basis, correct, clean contact data to start driving another level of automation. If you'd like more information, feel free to visit anytimecollect.com and contact us. You can request a demo. We're happy to go into more detail. And then we've got a great blog with lots of white papers, and we ask you to take advantage of those as well. And at this time, I'll open it up for anybody that might have a question.
Thanks, Matt. We actually did have a couple of questions come in throughout the webinar. The first one was, when should profile update be used to correct email addresses?
Oh, great question. So we use profile management, for instance, on Go Live. Obviously, one of the first things we want to do is figure out all the existing contact data that you would have. Is it all correct? And so we run a complete kind of update check on that. Then it's used actually anytime a new customer is added to the system, it triggers an automated digital onboarding experience for that customer where they can fill out all their information, make sure it was entered correctly, et cetera. And then the final one that we do a lot is either a quarterly or an annual check-in. And this just helps to update things like exemption certificates, any changes in contacts, that kind of thing. So it's really just kind of you kind of do it once as a refresh, then as new customers come in, and then annually on their anniversary date.
Very nice. The second question was, how long does it take to set up email automation?
Usually, so the process, by the time you start getting the first set of clean data and then configuring the different rules, that usually takes 2 to 4 weeks to set that up. Then working with the staff, usually email automation is turned on within a 6-week period. So.
And then we had one more just come in at the very end. What is the impact on DSO?
Yeah, great question. I should have used the that first example. So just in that example, the DSO went from in the 90s down to under 70. So, that's over 20 days of cash flow that was improved, which had another big impact. So we talked about not only the savings on cost, but then the increased cash flow and what that did for liquidity was pretty important for the team.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It looks like that was the last question that I saw come in. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Looks like we ended just a couple minutes early, but thank you again, and we hope that you found the content valuable.